In one of his most famous lessons, the Greek philosopher Plato told the story of men who lived in a cave. But their life was not ordinary. Inside the cave, several men lived chained to a wall. They were not criminals, but they were bound from their earliest childhood. These men were bound by shackles on their feet, and their heads were tied by a chain around their necks. Therefore, they could only see what was in front of them. They couldn't even look at each other. And all they could see in front of them was the bottom of the cave, illuminated by a light that was behind the wall. On the other side was a flame in a high place, which illuminated the space. There was also a bridge by the wall, where men passed carrying objects and puppets at the height of the wall. These objects cast a shadow at the bottom of the wall. These shadows were all that the prisoners knew of the world. The prisoners discussed the objects, giving them names and purposes. Sometimes the men carrying the objects would talk among themselves. And the prisoners, listening to the echo of the cave, believed that it was the shadows who spoke. But one day, one of these prisoners broke free. For this newly freed man, seeing the shape of the other prisoners for the first time made him very confused. He jumped over the wall, and on the other side, he could see the flame that illuminated the bottom of the cave. This man believed he had finally seen the sun, the element that allowed his whole world to exist. This man, as he began to see things he had never dreamed existed, came to doubt himself, thinking he might be crazy. The prisoner, seeing the flame up close, felt his eyes burn, but began to be fascinated by the light. This man noticed that at the exit of the cave, there was an even more fascinating light coming through the crack. He decided to look for the source of that light and leave the cave, but the way out was not easy. It was necessary to climb a steep slope to the surface. His muscles, atrophied by the imprisonment, made it more difficult. Finally, he reached the outside of the cave, and the strong midday light blinded his sight, which was only used to darkness. He felt desperate as he thought he had gone blind. But after rubbing his eyes, the uneasiness seemed to subside. Still with blurred vision, he was a stranger to all the new reality that lay before him. He felt safer looking at the shadows, as these were more familiar to him. But as his vision adapted to the new conditions, the man began to better understand the world around him. The remnants of objects were not what he had previously imagined. He realized that the sun was the true source of all light, and that the world in which he lived was pure illusion. This man began to live in harmony with this new reality. His past in the cave seemed to be behind him. But as he passed in front of the cave again, he remembered his colleagues, with whom he had spent most of his life. The others were still trapped, believing that the shadow world was all there was. The former prisoner decided to return to the cave and reveal all the lies of their lives and rescue them, leading them into the light. He placed himself between the men and the cave wall, but his colleagues did not recognize him. They knew that the man who had come out was one of the best shadow experts there was, so they challenged him to identify the images that emerged. What had once seemed easy had become almost impossible. His vision was no longer used to the darkness. He decided to tell his colleagues everything he had observed outside and his experiences. But the prisoners concluded that that light was only a source of blindness and madness. But the freed man did not give up on his colleagues and tried to break their chains. However, the prisoners seemed determined to remain in the world of shadows. For them, that was the only truth that existed. And so they were willing to defend even the chains that imprisoned them